I think you touched on a really important part there of like, even at your college, it's like things are separated. This is the healthy aisle. This is the unhealthy aisle. These are good foods. Those are bad foods. And I think that's one of the things where it's like, yeah, we can go on and even type in like healthy recipe and here it is. But we get so caught up in labeling what that food is, and that can start to go, and I know you know this all too well because you and I connect on this a lot, but how it's really fed into that really restrictive mindset.
What it do, crew? What's up, All Terrain fam? We are here on a podcast show, official, making it super legit, number 2. Okay, we'll narrow that down. But we have today our newest edition coach, Coach Alex. What it do? Say hi.
Hey, everyone.
How are you? And also the lovely and my fiance, Coach Hailey.
Had to add a second female to the coaching team, you know.
That's
make
right.
it well-rounded.
We needed a little more yin and yang inside the all-terrain team for sure. Well, if you're on here, we appreciate it. If you're in the group, Facebook, you know what to do. # live below. But today, I think we have a really good one. This is one that I know both of you ladies are gonna. I could probably just introduce, get it started, and then I could leave, and we would be here we'd have a great episode with or without me. But
we'd be here for like 3 hours though.
I might try to.
We need you to rein us in.
I might try to interject a few times. But today we're really going to kind of talk about clean eating versus eating well. So a lot of people come into our atmosphere. They come into the all-terrain atmosphere. They've done a bunch of diets. They've been either locked in a little box, or if they get outside of the Weight Watchers, the keto or whatever, they break away from that box, then they think their only other option is eating clean, meaning eliminating all the things. They think anyone who is lean into their later years is, somehow sacrificing all the fun things in life all the time. Mm-hmm. And we're going to kind of hopefully break a few of those things. So, Alex, why don't you kind of just, since this is kind of your first introduction podcast as a coach, just kind of tell everyone a little bit about your fitness journey, kind of the ups and downs that we've talked about in the past. So lead them off, tell them about your eating journey, and we'll go there.
Sure. So I was, I've always been somebody who has loved food. It's big in my family. Food is a reason that we come together. And so growing up, every meal we had was with a family. And it was just a big part of my upbringing. So as a kid, always a very active little kid, always loved to eat. As I got older, that did not change. However, when you get that freedom, when you leave the house for the first time, you go to college, you can eat whatever you want, right? Mm-hmm. And so stayed active, thought I was making good choices in college because I'd have a salad here or there, I'd get grilled chicken breast. And, as time went on, I gained some weight. I lost my ability to be as active as I was before. And then, that's when I started trying to lose a little bit of weight, when I had stepped on the scale after a holiday and realized that I had gained like maybe 40, 50 pounds. And that just wasn't me. That was 4 years ago, 2018. And so on my own, I started cleaning up my eating, what I thought was cleaning up my eating at the time. And compared to what I was doing, it was not clean eating. It was just better eating than what I was doing. And then at that point, that's when I connected with you guys after a year and a half of doing that, fixing my eating, limiting things a bit to a point where I wasn't comfortable, wasn't living a sustainable lifestyle. I had hit a plateau. And that was probably about after losing 25 pounds on my own. When I connected with you guys, you helped teach me the importance of protein. That's when we started the deficit process, the reverse deficit process, which was terrifying, but very beneficial. And that helped me drop those last 20 pounds while also being able to go out, still cook meals that I like, have drinks with friends, really live a very normal, balanced lifestyle without limitation. and now I understand what my body needs and I know how to get that, but I will not sacrifice the food. You guys know me. I'm not going to limit what I eat. I'm not just going to eat grilled chicken and vegetables every day. I like to eat. I like to make meals and bring family and friends together. And so that's been a big piece of my fitness journey, is finding ways to recreate recipes that I love into a way that's more healthy and sustainable for myself and those around me. And then one day my future family of my own. And that's been a big piece, along with the exercise and everything else that comes along with it.
She's been an official all-terrain coach now for about a month-ish. And she's already the resident expert on how to create delicious, calorie-friendly, protein-high recipes. So I love that. I
mean, she's the... Alex is the go-to girl that if you need to, like, if you have a favorite dish, which, like, I feel like everyone has their one thing where they're like, I will not live without this. Like, I have to eat it. Like, I know we have one athlete that's like, pad thai, like, I have to find a way to fit this in. There's no way I'm just not eating pad thai for the rest of my life. And Alex is like the typical person to be like, look, we're going to take that and we're going to flip it. Is there a favorite thing that you, in your process, I mean, you love cooking in general. And if anyone wants to follow Alex on Instagram, she will just post the most beautiful pictures of food. Sometimes they're not so beautiful, but super tasty. What's kind of your favorite?
Was that kind of harsh? Not so beautiful?
She's right. They're not so beautiful, but I'm going to post them anyway. Ugly but delicious. It's a thing.
Right? I'm like,
the story of my life.
I think that's a show. But what's kind of your favorite thing that you were like, that one from her. You were like, I'm not going to get rid of this, but I found a way to kind of make a healthier version?
Ooh, that's a hard one. Pastas are huge for me. Like the feeling of pasta and sauce and, meat that goes in it. I love a big hearty pasta dish. I love like baked ziti, baked lasagna. That is probably my most favorite thing. And that was something that I have a lot of different versions depending on what I need nutritionally that I will make. Some more protein heavy, some more calorically friendly. But I've got like 20 million pasta recipes because I cannot give up pasta. It's not a thing for me.
There we go. If you're watching, you can see she's eating pasta and is jacked. So I wonder how that's possible.
I'm curious though, when you were trying to do this on your own, before you found All Terrain, you were like, I cleaned up my eating, I was making better choices. This is what I was doing. What did that look like? Like, what does that mean? Cleaning it up?
Yeah, sure. So really when I started everything, the first thing that I did was started incorporating more whole foods, which I still do now. I think that was a very good move. Replacing snacks before I would have chips. Like to me, I would eat tortilla chips and dip like all day long. And so then the first thing I did was I would buy multigrain tortilla chips and dip them in Greek yogurt, right? Tastes like sour cream. And I was like, oh, it's multigrain and it's Greek yogurt. Like I am very healthy. But then, when it comes to the whole foods, I would start eating more like berries, string cheese, stuff like that for my snacks. Dinners and larger meals, I would be making a lot of like eggs, like normal eggs, ate a lot of avocado, a lot of multigrain bread. Dinners were always with a big, heavy portion of brown rice, some kind of starch, but it was brown rice, right? So instead of thinking like, oh, well, I'm not eating French fries or I'm not eating white rice, which you guys know doesn't really make much of a difference, I would have brown rice, but then I would put like a big scoop of butter in it, like mix that up. I would cook all my chicken and I would just dump oil in a pan. But in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm having grilled chicken and I'm having brown rice and I'm having broccoli, like steamed broccoli or roasted broccoli, but I would coat that in oil, cook that in butter, all of those kinds of things because it tasted good. And I didn't really think about the fact that condiments and oils and portion sizes mattered because I was eating what society told me were the healthy foods. You can eat as much fruit and berries and rice as you want because that's what is healthy for you. And so that's what it looked like to me at that point in time. And initially it helped because I was eating so poorly before in comparison. but that can only go so far. And it wasn't getting me the composition that I wanted. It wasn't really getting my weight to where I wanted. I wasn't able to fuel myself the way I wanted, but I didn't understand what I needed at that point.
That's a perception that a lot of people fall into, right? Everything you just said, how you're kind of looking at the multigrain, you're looking at switching it to Greek yogurt. You're like, oh, multigrain, it must be healthy. So why do you feel as if where do you feel like that perception and those associations started? Like, how did your whole reality around food kind of get shaped from your past? Like you said, society. What do you feel like are some of those pitfalls that people kind of run into, these messages that they're getting bombarded with all the time that have kind of created our perception around food?
I think a big piece of it, one, it's how you're brought up. My family, we always ate well. We always had vegetables with our meals. We always had proteins with our meals. But something that, I always did was I would always go back for seconds for the things that tasted really good that maybe weren't the best for me. But as a kid, you're picky, so you eat what you can eat. And as long as you're getting your nutrition and you're living, then that's like the goal as a kid. Living in the world that we live in now, I would honestly say a huge thing for me growing up was social media. You would go on there, you would look up like healthy recipes. And I still.
So she was doing this as a kid.
No, not as a kid. I mean, when I was a kid,
hello, Teenager. MySpace right. Was still a thing, people.
Right.
All right. So we now know she's been looking at food on social since MySpace days.
For sure. I loved MySpace. I was really
We
good
know
at
a little bit more about you now.
But yeah, I mean, growing up, it was really just eat what's in front of you, eat what's given to you. My family grew up on the motto of you'll eat what's prepared or you're going to be hungry tonight. We're not going to accommodate making 5 different meals because you don't want what's in front of you. And then again, going to school, going to college, when I was in the dining hall, I remember they had like the healthy area, like the baked area. You had your deep fried area that you knew to stay away from because it wasn't considered healthy food. And then you had like your home style meals that they're like, this is where you get your healthy food. But same thing, vegetables were coated in oil, vegetables were coated in butter. So you never really understood what things tasted like without having a heavy amount of fat, sodium, and all of that added to it. So it just kind of seemed like the reality of it. It wasn't until, go ahead, please.
No, I think you touched on a really important part there of like, even at your college, it's like things are separated. This is the healthy aisle. This is the unhealthy aisle. These are good foods. Those are bad foods. And I think that's one of the things where it's like, yeah, we can go on and even type in like healthy recipe and here it is. But we get so caught up in labeling what that food is. And that can start to go, and I know you know this all too well because you and I connect on this a lot, but how it's really fed into that really restrictive mindset that once you kind of start to reframe trying to eat a little better, make those little shifts, it can be a little bit of a slippery slope. It's like you start to do that, you see some progress, and then you start to go a little too haywire and start to cut out this and cut out that and cut out this. Like, well, now I can't have gluten. Now I can't have dairy. Now I can only have this type of nut. Like, I can't have peanut butter. I can't have this. And that just starts to like be this overwhelming thing of stress because it's almost like, especially once you start making progress, like, well, I'm healthy, so I can't eat that. And I don't know if you've noticed that same thing where it's like when we put those labels, not only on food, but on so many different things, but when we label something good, something bad, something this, something that, like it just collapses our world so much. And that just like that restrictive mindset, I think has been a huge pitfall, not only for me and a lot of the athletes within All Train, but I think it's a huge breakthrough that you've made too.
Yeah. And I think the big thing was like, it's that all or nothing mindset, right? Once you decide that you want to kind of clean up your lifestyle and you get into that, typically you become more aware of what you're putting in your body. And that makes it really easy to kind of swear off all the things that you liked before that you deem unhealthy. When in reality, it's perfectly fine to have. You just can't eat like 20 mozzarella sticks in one sitting and expect to feel okay the next day. Maybe You still can. You just need to know you're not going to feel okay the next day. And I still do sometimes. I just don't feel okay the next day. It's just what it is. Right. But it's all about that balance. And I think that people neglect that balance because they don't want to sabotage themselves. And they're so afraid of letting go a little bit of that control. I'm still guilty of that myself at times, that they don't realize that there isn't inherently a good or a bad food. It's just how much you're intaking. You know, if you're intaking all the food that's fat and you're taking in no protein and you're taking in just carbs and fat, like you're not going to build your muscles, but you can still enjoy those things that are in those categories as long as you're balancing it out with something else.
Side note though, when we owned a gym, we had a member who would come to the 7 a.m. class, and every so often, like once a week.
Oh my God, I know where you're going with this.
He would just slowly disappear from the class, and then he wouldn't come back. And I'd be like, Mike, where'd you go?
It'd be like 2 minutes into the warm up, and we're like, okay, we didn't even like piss him off yet. Like, it's not that the workout is killed him. He would just like wander off. And
he would come back and I'd be like, Mike, where were you? He's like, well, we ate a whole cheese wheel last night and drank a 6-pack of IPAs. I was like, well, I understand. Why you weren't
Mike's my
here?
kind of guy.
Right? Like, but exactly too. I thought of that when you were saying the 30 string cheeses. But to bring it back to one thing that you mentioned that I think is something that we talk a lot with our parents that we coach, right? Is the culture, right? Setting up the culture. Like you mentioned, the culture that you grew up in was a big driver of how you perceived foods, how you looked at foods, how you went in the grocery store and looked at it, right? And not only, when we talk about making a lifestyle change and a transformation, not only for your health, right? If you're a parent, you are the driver, and you are a big influencer of how your kid's life's going to turn out when it comes to food, associations with food, how they view themselves, how they view food, everything that comes along with it, right? And it's such a thing that people aren't super aware of, right? They're not super, because they're just walking through their culture, right? And they think that's normal. This is normal. My kid has a normal thing because I think this is normal. It's like a religion, right? It's almost like, you grow up, I'm still kind of a religious person myself, but I didn't choose my religion, right? I was born into that religion. If I were born into another family over in Asia, I'd probably be a part of a different religion, right? Same thing with how we view food, right? And so many parents don't realize it's like you were born into this culture and you're most likely handing down the same culture. So if you want to change your lifestyle, you also have the opportunity to completely change the culture of future generations, right? And when speaking to kind of the grocery stores, right? The big thing I think that we've gotten so down this whole clean eating and these misconceptions is, I'm going to take an example from my father, right? My father grew up, pretty much raised by his grandfather and his grandmother who owned a farm, pretty much lived off the land, right? And so they just ate, it was home cooked things. He would be out on the farm. She would be inside cooking all day, and they ate things that grew off the land, right? And so we had this cultural shift where all of a sudden you didn't have, little farmers markets and little markets in the town square that maybe you would go and get some other produce that you're not producing. All of a sudden we had commercialized produce, right? So now we had access to all these foods that we didn't have access to all year long. So now we all of a sudden have a new opportunity, a new thing, novel thing in our world that's so important to our, because it's food. And we don't know how to formulate it. Like we didn't know how. Just 2 generations ago, we really made this huge shift in food that totally changed how we perceived it. We had to formulate how we perceived it, right? It was a new thing that we had to actually formulate. Well, what is all these things that are actually, making us not healthy or unhealthy, right? Before we just couldn't get unhealthy because you couldn't eat enough of the food that grew off the land, freaking come wintertime.
There wasn't bulk.
Yeah. Come wintertime, you were eating the spuds and the potatoes left from winter, right? Like you were, getting down to stews and meat and, corn from last year. Nothing crazy, right? And you're not going to overeat stew to the point that you're out of, you're overweight, right? But now we went into this culture where you can have, something that weighs, 3 ounces and it's like 500 calories, right? And so that's a big thing that I think that overall, we're still formulating our understanding of how to coat this world of instant access 24/7, 365 to all these processed foods, to all these things that can easily derail our health. And so it is about us creating new cultures for our family, right? It's us creating new patterns to hand down to our kids of like, hey, this is a new world that, just our parents were the first ones, maybe their parents were the first ones introduced to this 24/7 life. But now we're the ones to kind of lead the charge. Like, all right, we've got a little clear understanding of how to navigate this. It's not so much eating clean, right? Mm-hmm. It's about eating well. It's about eating for your metabolism. It's about eating for what's going to suit your lifestyle and not so much pigeonholing you into these boxes of clean eating.
Well, and I think that's really important too, especially passing it down generationally, my goodness, is that there's so many ways that you can approach it. But I think the main thing is eating well, right? You don't want to expose a little kid to, you can only eat the low calorie stuff. You can only eat this. You can only eat that, because that's going to lead to a negative mentality towards food, towards nutrition, towards eating. It can still be fun. It can still be special. You can still indulge in things. But I think when you put it in the sense that this is going to fuel your body, this is what you need to grow, become strong, as opposed to don't eat that, you'll be fat. Don't eat that. That'll go straight to your hips. That's framing it in a way that fuels that stigma behind it, right? That you can't enjoy things. You can't have things in moderation. It's all or nothing. You can't have things that make you feel good because they're going to make you look bad, which is a huge societal pressure right now, is how you look. And it always has been. It always unfortunately will be.
Yeah. You said something before, and it's really cool. So just for listeners out there in general, Alex was one of my athletes when she first came into the all-terrain sphere. And one of the things that we would talk about a lot was the language we use when we talk about food, and the language we use when we talk about ourselves in general and how important it is. And just at the beginning of this episode, you were focused fully on like, well, when you eat that, you don't feel good. And it used to be reframed in a completely different way of like, well, if I eat that, I'll gain weight. And I think it's just those small language shifts. And I think it's super important. And especially like I have a background with in education and teaching young children, but the language we use and the things we do, they're watching. And they are watching every single move that we make. And especially with food and making those conscious decisions. And I think one of my favorite stories is actually giving them the knowledge so they understand. Now, you're not going to like go walk around and have like a textbook and tell them everything like calories and everything in their food. But letting them know and understand why you're eating certain foods and why you made a specific choice over something else. So when I was a nanny a couple years ago, I had blueberries, and this little girl was like, why do you eat blueberries? And I was like, oh, they have antioxidants. And if anyone has ever hung out with a small child, they love big words. It's like the most exciting thing in the world. And so then every other time she would pick a random food out of the fridge and she'd be like, well, what is it? Does this have antioxidants? And she, like, let's say, I think she pulled out like a turkey breast, and I was like, oh yeah, that's really high in protein. It was like, it just turned into this game. And I'm like, you know what? We don't talk about food. And it's this like weird, what's that word? Where it's like often taboo. Yeah. It's like this taboo thing where, weight and food and trying to get in shape, all these things are taboo because you think you're going to say the wrong thing, when really you just need to actually talk about it and give accurate information and knowledge. So then it's not this fear that comes behind it. You don't grow up in the fear of being fat and the fear of not being able to do what you want to do. You actually know and understand what you're doing. And I think it starts with learning, and that's what you've been able to do. And you are incorporating whole foods. And I think you notice now as a coach, that's one of the biggest things is like, we have to eat so we feel good. We're going to eat so we can move better. Like there's a purpose behind what we're doing. And that might look different for you. It might look different for me, but we don't need to tell everyone to cut out all of these things because we're not all the same people,
Correct. Yeah.
To speak to that.
Yeah.
And the importance of learning, because another thing is wherever you're kind of at, you shouldn't feel guilty. right?
Yeah.
Shouldn't feel guilty about that because, I mean, you know, my father's super healthy, runs marathons. He qualified
too
for
fast.
Boston at age 48. But it's like when I was raising you, healthy was spaghetti and toast, like spaghetti and bread. He's like, that was like a healthy meal, right? And so, knowledge is ever evolving, right? And so wherever you're at, right, if you feel like you're stuck, you feel like you have been raised in that same culture that hasn't set you up for success, right? Don't beat yourself up. Don't feel guilty. It's about you can easily gain the knowledge. And you look at Alex, right? In 4 simple months, you were at a position where you were stuck. You were kind of stuck in that clean eating phase. And then we got you to understand a little bit, hey, regardless of what it is you're eating, those units of energy called calories, they're going to add up, right? You can very easily overeat those, right? So I think I'm be curious is like, even when you were clean eating and then we got you to start adhering to your energy needs, what were some of the big foods or maybe things that you noticed? You're like, oh, wow, I kind of thought that was healthy, but this has a lot of hidden calories in it.
Yeah, for sure. Multigrain, like the seriously nutty, seedy breads and stuff like that. Any kind of sauces, like I would choose ketchup instead of ranch dressing, right? Because I'm like, oh, it's tomato based. No, it's full of sugar, full of stuff like that. Oils like olive oil, yes, there's health benefits to it if you use it in moderation. But if you're dumping olive oil in your food at every meal, I think that when I was cooking with heavy oils and stuff like that, without knowing it, I was adding 500-600 calories per meal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So those types of things, when I think of like meats and stuff like that, like I think of like, I would just buy full fat ground beef, full fat ground turkey, stuff like that, because it was maybe $1 cheaper, but looking and comparing the calories versus more lean cuts of meat, more lean ground meats, it made a huge, huge difference.
Yeah. So, and then for people out there that are listening or watching, what did we have you do with your food that was different? And what do you also coach athletes on now with their food? How do we kind of adhere and change that up?
Logging it. That is the biggest thing. It's so simple. It's something that people think is going to be so time consuming and overwhelming, but just giving yourself that education of realizing what you're putting into your body, right? Logging everything, weighing things out. It maybe takes 2 or 3 extra minutes anytime I'm putting a meal together to just throw it on my scale and be like, oh, you know what? I don't need 15 ounces of chicken. I need 6 or 7. Let me take some of that and put it back. Right. So logging, that's been the biggest thing to me. Monitoring my protein intake. Again, for weight loss, it's so important to keep your protein high. So that way you're still able to build your muscle and you're not losing your muscle mass when you're trying to lose that fat if you are in a caloric deficit. So really just monitoring that stuff and then helping me figure out what my caloric needs were. Starting off right off the bat, just logging what a normal day would look like for me. I was way overeating for what my normal needs were, even though I thought I was filling up on things that were super low calorie. And I was like, you know what? I can eat all of this that I want, but I would eat so much of it that it was just putting me over every single time. So logging it, tracking it, being mindful of what you're actually putting into your body was the biggest thing for me. Absolutely.
I will say though, with tracking, this is one of the things that I get asked frequently, and I'm pretty sure you do as well, is like, isn't that super restrictive and pretty disordered though?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think a big thing, I have a background in mental health, and I think a big thing is also being very cognizant of where your baseline is. If you're somebody who has a big history of, disordered eating and stuff like that, that's something you really need to take into consideration before you start doing hardcore tracking. And you and I have had this conversation a lot of times. It's very easy, and it's similar to what we talked about before, where you start doing your clean eating and you see the weight come off. It's really easy to look at what you're tracking and be like, you know what? I can cut that. I can cut that. I can eat less. I can eat less. And it's easy to do that. And that's why I think it's so important to really be paying attention to, if you're working with one of our coaches, which I would recommend because I wouldn't have been able to figure this out on my own, realizing what your needs are, because if you start getting more restrictive with it, all of that kind of stuff, you're really just doing damage to yourself in the long run. You're slowing down your metabolism. You're not fueling your body the way it needs to be. And tracking should be more so just a tool for your own knowledge. So you know what you're putting in. So you know if you need to eat a little more of one thing, a little more of another, not necessarily like how low can I go and what can I put in here to eat the least amount. It's something that you have to be very cognizant of. That is very doable. It's very doable, but people have had bad experiences with them, and it is what it is. Nothing is a perfect fit for everybody, but it's how you use the tool. And it's a really great tool for somebody who is prioritizing their health and their metabolic needs.
And that,
Go for it.
you go, I go, you me.
I can keep going.
Little Roxbury action. Anyways, I wanted to bring up to your point of the obsessiveness, right? Like that's why people come to our atmosphere, and we keep our athletes' numbers small so we can give you all more time and awareness so we can pick up on these things, right? And we get you to a point where we literally want you to stop. We want you to break away. Like how many times has Hailey been like, Alex, you're not going to track for a whole week, and you're like, right?
I'm gonna die.
But even if you are, I've seen people who do have some obsessiveness when it comes to eating and some eating disorders, right? But they let that go to a point where they let their health get out of the way, right? Or go totally the opposite way. And I'm like, I know you have a tougher journey than most, but you have to dip your toes. You have to go into the fray a little bit to still keep your health, right? You still have to find everything in life is a yin and yang of balance, right? Everything is about, am I too far on one side or am I too far on the other? And how it's about having support in a team to find that middle ground, right? Like when you kind of go and do things on your own, like this is what we talk about. Like why is a tribe support guidance so much more important than information? Is because you take information, you formulate your own ideas, and then now you haven't bounced it off anyone else to decide, is this a good idea, right? And that's how we really formulate anything else in our life, right? When you're like, hey, I'm about to make this big life decision, do you just kind of do it yourself? No, you typically talk to your parents, your friends, right? Us having conversations is us formulating our actual thoughts, formulating our plans, deciphering, getting input from somebody else. Like, all right, is this, your help, other people are helping you navigate. Is this too far to one side or the other? And that's the importance of support and guidance, not just trying to bootstrap your fitness yourself, right? Is because then if you are that person who tends to be more obsessive, you end up letting yourself go down the rabbit hole, which I know I've been down multiple rabbit holes myself, but it's just like anything, right? You don't want to go too far to the point where you're obsessive. That's not healthy either, which is why in our atmosphere, we try to go through a phased 1, 2, 3, 4. By 3 and 4, we're trying to get you to intuitively eat. But we also don't want to be just avoid it completely. Well, I know I'm obsessive and I know this can be obsessive, but so I'm just not going to keep my health in check. It's like, well, cool, right? You traded off one unhealthy thing for something that will probably put you in a hospital bed a little bit quicker than being a little, obsessed with tracking your macros. But, the yin and yang is just like anything in life, right? It's like greed, right? You can be too greedy and get too far down the rabbit hole where you hurt other relationships. You can be too selfish, anything, right? We go too far one way. If you're not greedy enough, then you're not able to support a family, right? You don't care about finances at all, and you live out of a van down by a river,
Is that what you're gonna do?
Yeah. If this doesn't work, I'm going in the van.
Yeah, a really important point there where you're talking about the importance of the community and the support. Mm-hmm. When people are starting off with tracking, if you have had no history with it, or you're somebody who's just starting to take control of your health, like when you are sick, you go to a doctor, right? When you need a professional opinion, you go to a professional. And that is the same thing with a community like this. Like you go to the support system so they can help guide you and teach you the skills that you need. Nobody is an expert of something just because they downloaded an app. You know what I mean?
Right.
And personally, like going through this myself with you guys, which I think is really unique to this whole situation, is there was plenty of times where you guys pushed me to do things that I did not want to do. And I know I dug my heels in, and I might have thrown a little bit of a pissy fit about it because I didn't think that was going to benefit me, because in my head, I knew what was going to benefit me. You can ask Hailey. I have plenty of angry talks with her. Yeah. But and enjoy this.
Fiery women in the offering team. Yeah,
you're not going to hear this often, so really just savor what I'm about to say. But you guys were right every time, and that's why
I was right every time.
savor it, because. But at the end of the day, when it comes to something that's so, whether you want to admit it or not, this is an emotional process. Something so emotional and touchy. Something so emotional and touchy, you need somebody to push you out of your comfort zone, and you need somebody to hold you accountable, because emotions will 9 out of 10 times get the best of you when it comes to stuff like this. So it's really important to find that support network.
And I think the type of support that you're talking about is really important too. And this is why not only is it important that you go and find a coach, yes, but the beauty of our community is that it's not just your coach you're talking to. It's everyone. And that's the thing. And we talk about it a lot of, how do you make the decision, the difference of when do I give myself grace and when do I tell myself okay, get your shit together, give yourself some tough love. And I think that's also really important in our atmosphere. We're not just going to be your cheerleaders all the time. It's not our goal, whether it's with nutrition, whether it's with training, whether it's with mindset. There's going to be a time where the hard truth is going to have to come out, and being able to have that relationship with a coach is incredibly important, because if you can't go there, you can't go deep, you can't have that real talk with your athlete, your community, your friends, everything's going to stay surface level, and your progress is going to stay surface level. And so I know you and I, it was, never anything bad or crazy, but it was I know I'm pushing you outside of your limits, and I know you don't want to do this, and I am here to support you when it gets really fucking hard, because it's going to, but I'm going to ask that you do this and trust. What do we always say? Trust the process. Because I promise there's a reason for why I'm asking you to do this. But I think that's one of the biggest things is we don't always just need someone rah, you can do it, you got this. Great, thanks, I got it. But right now, I don't want to fucking do it. And I think all of us have hit that point. I know you have hit that point, and especially with food. And this is kind of what we were talking about before of you started making really, really amazing progress, and it felt super good. You were feeling really confident. And then you had this fear that it was all going to disappear. It was too good to be true. And it was almost that identity shift hadn't happened yet of this isn't who I am. I'm still the old Alex. And I think almost everyone who has gone through some sort of transformation in general has had that same thing where it's this is so exciting. Oh shit. I don't deserve this. This is too good to be true. And I think, that's when you really started to find the way of I need to stop being so restrictive, and I need to find a way to enjoy things. So I don't know if maybe you could talk a little bit about that fear and kind of where you started to not derail. That's not the word I'm trying to look for, but where you noticed
or where the obstacle
yeah.
came and then you made this mental shift. I mean, as somebody like yourself, like you said, you have a mental history background. Like, you know, how important is it to run into those mental obstacles and overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, this is an ongoing process. You and I just talked about this yesterday, right? This has been something my whole life, and I know I'm not alone with this. Weight and health has been something my whole life that I've always struggled with. I've always seen it as like something to stress out over. Mm-hmm. Never in my life prior to really this point in time was I at a point where I didn't feel like I could stay where I was. Like I was always in the mindset of, oh, if I could lose 5 more pounds, oh, if I could do this, oh, if I could do that. And I think a big part of that shift was probably a few months ago when I went into a second deficit after my first one where I lost 20 pounds, right? And I remember being so focused on a certain number that I idealized, that I saw as the golden standard. I had never been that small since I was like a kid. And I was like, if I can just get there, I'll be good to go. Meanwhile, I had said that months prior to the weight that I was already at.
More.
If I could just have more, right? More. We always want more.
More money.
So
or for women, if I could just be less, less,
right,
not
right.
more.
And I remember that during that time, man, you made me mad that day, and you know it. You told me no
the
more.
Authenticity comes out.
Yeah, I
said,
will be honest.
Bye-bye, scale. See you later.
And so that for me, I think was a huge thing, because prior to that, when I had gained weight, I had stopped weighing myself, and I wouldn't step on the scale, not because I knew what I was doing was fine. I wouldn't step on the scale because I knew what I was doing was not fine internally, and I didn't want to face the reality of it, right? And I think that's where this is kind of separated. Like, if you know you're doing things that aren't going to benefit you, there needs to be accountability in some kind of way, like a scale, a measurement, something like that. But we were at a point, and I was at a point where I had really honed in on my nutrition. I knew what I needed to do. I was working out, doing the workouts I needed to do. But because I was so focused on that scale, even though I was getting stronger, I was getting faster, I was doing things more easily, because I didn't see the number dropping, I started feeling like I was failing, because my whole life was, if I do what I need to do and I work out, I need to be smaller. Mm-hmm. What were you going to say, Hailey?
I was going to say, for everyone listening, she literally, when Alex came in, I had her start doing dumbbell hip thrusts with like a 25-pound dumbbell. During this process, when she's like, I just want to be this number, she was hip thrusting, 300 pounds for 12 reps?
325.
My bad, everyone. 325 for 12 reps. You randomly ran a half marathon just like around your neighborhood for fun one day. Yeah.
All-terrain. Hashtag all-terrain.
Right? You PR'd your 5K time. You PR'd your mile. You started swimming. You liked the way you looked, all these things. And you were like, Hailey, I'm not that number. Like, that's what matters. And I was like, I'm going to punch you in the face. And so I had to.
Yeah. Well, and no, but seriously, Garry, you asked like, where was your big shift? I think it was that point in time. Never in my life would I say, you know what, you're right, I'm not going to step on that scale. Especially when I was in the process of,
you
again,
make that
trying
face
to lose
with Andrew
weight.
a lot.
Yes. I'm going to get my way.
Yeah. This is my wife face.
So with that, throughout that whole process, it was probably 2 or 3 months, and we focused on how you're feeling. How do you feel in your skin? How do you feel in your emotions in your everyday life? And it was the most healthy I've ever felt in my life. And so at the end of that whole cycle, where when I did it previously, I lost 20 pounds. I did the same thing this time around. When I got on the scale after not weighing myself for 2 or 3 months, and I saw that the number didn't change, normally in the past, that would have crushed me. I would have felt like I wasted my time completely, and it really would have spiraled down. It would have been something where I would have been like, F this, I'm out. Like, I don't care. But this time around, I was like, cool. Look at all the other great things that I did. Like, I just, that was like a big breaking point for me. And it's something that even now, like Hailey and I were talking the other day, I've been able to maintain the progress that I've made for so long at this point that it's become comfortable and it's become routine. And it almost sometimes, and working on catching myself because it's an ever going process, there's still days that I feel like it's too good to be true, in the sense that like, I'm enjoying my life, I'm maintaining my goals, and I'm not backtracking. And I think because I've always been striving for more or less, if you would say, that sitting comfortably where I should be and where I'm happy to be just is a foreign feeling. It's not a wrong feeling. It's just an uncomfortable feeling. And I think a lot of us have a hard time sitting with our discomfort. It's not a bad thing. It's just something that people have a hard time doing, is being in a position that makes them a little bit uncomfortable. We want out. We don't want to be uncomfortable. When normally when we're uncomfortable, it means we're growing and we're building. So I think that's an important thing.
When we talk to everyone who comes in. It's like again, all our athletes watching, you know what to do when I have our initial phone call together. It's like, hey, have you lost weight in the past? And they're like, yeah, I have. And then I'm like, did you gain a lot of it back? And they're like, yeah, I have.
How'd you know?
And I'm like, well, yeah, because when you get to that new position, you think like it's just going to all of a sudden be sunshine and rainbows and you're going to be walking through a field full of daisies. It's like, no, when you get there, there's going to be unforeseen obstacles that you don't know are going to arise. And guess what? Those new obstacles are, again, another thing that you have to overcome and go towards, right? You getting to this position where I'm gaining more muscle. I'm running a half marathon, but I still want to be this number on a scale. It's like, all right, here's your new obstacle to get to a position where you're at now, where you enjoy it, right? Like that was the next obstacle you had to overcome. And that, again, speaks to guidance and support, right? Every diet out there is like, they just want to sell you on the first little step. Like, hey, your first obstacle, like, don't look at this whole mountain up here. I'm going to blind you. Here's this whole mountain up here that you have to climb.
Summit.
But I'm just going to give you this one. I'm going to get you up the first step, right? I'm going to get you over the first little Spartan race obstacle, right? And then with the rest of it, I just give me your money and then you're on the way to the next one, right? Like, good luck figuring out the next thing. But hey, when you come back around and buy Weight Watchers for the third time, right, we'll keep getting you over the same one little hurdle. But that's anything in life, right? Like you said, sitting with being comfortable with your new position, right? Sitting with, you accumulate knowledge, you accumulate wealth, you accumulate fitness, getting to this position that you wanted to get there. And then now you're there and you're like, is this wrong? Is this something that I shouldn't be here? Am I not welcome to the party type thing? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And right.
This is now, but this is the thing. And this is one of the best things about All Terrain is that you are here now, and what have you decided to do is give it to other people. You're not just sitting there and being like, okay, here, I have my pot of gold. Like, thank you for teaching me these things. And one of the biggest reasons why Alex came on as a coach, not for like the progress and everything that she made within our program, but the light she shines to the community around her. Like, people can tell when someone genuinely cares about you and when someone genuinely wants to help. And I think that's one of the biggest gifts just of you as a person in general, is that you have taken what you've learned and you want to give that, not only you're like, yeah, to my family, but you're like, I want to give this to as many people as I can, because I know what you felt like. I have been there. I have walked in your shoes and it was dark. Like, I think we can all admit we've gotten there and it really, really sucked. And you're like, I know. So I want to take my knowledge and make your life better, because I know the power that it's had for me, and I'm not stopping here. So it's almost like, I mean, it's not even necessarily an obstacle, but it's just, and one thing leads to another. And I think your biggest thing now is now you're creating impact with that.
Hey there, thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the episode and took away some value that will amplify your life. But if you are ready to become an all-terrain human yourself, then click the link below to head over to our Facebook group to receive a copy of our all-terrain body blueprint, the 5 key pillars to a fast metabolism for life. These 5 pillars will show you how to speed up your metabolism at any age and eat for your specific metabolic needs so you can obtain your ideal composition without eliminating foods and spending all day in the gym. So if you're ready to reclaim your energy, vitality, and fire for life, then click the link below and head over to the All Terrain Fitness Mentality and Fat Loss Facebook group to pick up a copy of the All Terrain Body Blueprint, the 5 key pillars to a fast metabolism for life, and we will see you on the inside. So I think we should lead into the most important question.
The best question of all.
Oh, God.
What well, you've answered this many a times, but what does being all-terrain really mean to you?
Oh, gosh. There's so many things that I could say, honestly. To me, being all-terrain is being the best version of yourself, not just like, and I don't mean like the best looking version of yourself. I mean, holistically, becoming the best version of yourself and understanding that it is an ever going process, and that it's something that involves community, and it involves much more than just eating a little bit and working out a lot. It means that you're spreading impact. You're doing things that not only benefit yourself, but you benefit other people, encouraging people to reach for the goals that they may not have had the confidence to do before. And just sharing that knowledge that comes through the whole process of being part of the all-terrain community, right? I think that being all-terrain is an all-encompassing thing, which is why I like it so much and is why I'm so passionate about it. It's the first time in my life where I've gone into something feeling really self-conscious and come out a much more confident and positive version of myself. And I think that something that is so genuinely great is that is what everybody in that community strives for. And, if you're going to be all-terrain, you're going to be somebody who works hard, plays hard, and cares hard about yourself and everyone around you. And I just love that.
I don't think we could have said it any better. That was freaking awesome.
I love it. Alex, thank you so much. You're a rock star. I can't wait to see how far you go with your coaching and being an all-terrain. I know you've already helped so many people already in the short time, and I know, sky's the limit for you. So anyone on there, if you got any value from this, if you're in the Facebook group or in the YouTube comments, drop the hashtag value below. But real quick, if you're somebody who's looking for some coaching support, you've realized that you've done kind of the low, let's say low quality, try quick fixes type thing, and you're ready, like, hey, I think I actually need support. I need to understand more of how to eat for my needs. You can always shoot us a direct message or go to our Facebook group, All-Terrain Fitness, Mentality, and Fat Loss. Not only will you get to potentially work with us, once you get in there, we're going to give you any of our free PDFs. We have a free at-home workout, which is awesome. Every time anyone does one of those, they get super sweaty.
Oh, yes.
We have a free upper mobility guide. And what else we got? We got a macro-friendly recipe book coming out with Coach Alex here too. Boom, boom. That'll be awesome to see. It's going to be epic. And in there, through all of that, if you work with us, our whole goal is to always show you how important it is to not just eat clean, but eat well. Eat well in the sense for your metabolic needs, eat the clean foods that you want to eat, and then also know how to eat those foods that you still want to enjoy. Right? That is eating well. That is a lifestyle that's going to be sustainable. If you don't enjoy the eating process, you're never going to stick with it. Right? When your dog, you get it to sit, right? You don't hit it every time and create this negative association with it, right? You give it a positive association with food, right? So it's like, hey, I'm going to keep doing this action over and over. So if your food is associated with a negative association, you don't enjoy it, you don't enjoy eating, you're never going to make it a lifestyle. You're never going to hit that out of you to the point that you stick with it for life, right? Motivation is never going to be a long-term thing. It's not going to be a long-term metric to keep you in that diet. It's always going to come down to eating well, eating for your lifestyle. And if you can eat within your needs, you can still have a well-balanced life, which is what we do with everyone here. So we'd love to have you. We'd love to show you that. And in fact, we're going to do a post-show wrap-up. So if you're listening to this, make sure you head over to YouTube, or if you head in our Facebook group, we're going to get that post-show wrap-up, and we're going to kind of walk you through the intricacies, the nuances of how important it is to eat for your metabolic needs. There's no inherently bad food unless it's bad for you. And we're going to show you how important it is, first and foremost, to prioritize how much you're filling your gas tank. Because even if you eliminate foods that you don't agree with, right? The other foods that do agree with you, you can still overeat those. I don't care if you're on keto, you can still overeat keto very easily. So we're going to show you the importance of not overfilling your gas tank and not running on E, and learning how to fill that gas tank up to the full line each and every time. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you, All-Terrain fam. Anything else you all want to say before we sign off?
Well, in our free group, you can always, we have all those freebies that are great. You can always message any of the coaches in there. But if you just, low-key want to reach out to Alex all by herself, where can they find you?
I always post in that all-terrain page. So that's the easiest way to find me is to go on there, and you're probably going to see me babbling on or posting about something in there. You can add me on Facebook. You can follow me on Instagram. I tag all-terrain all the time. They share my
What's your
posts.
Instagram
I'm really
handle?
easy. It is AFreas94, AFREAS94. Please follow me.
That might be changing soon.
It might be time to
everyone
update
out there,
it.
if you want to find her sweet recipes on Instagram, look for Alex_all-terrain.
Got it. So that's what we're going to do.
Boom.
Boom. Mic drop.
Boom.
Peace out, crew.
Thanks,
Bye,
Alex.
guys.